Good afternoon. This is Paulette Downey, and I have a word from the Lord. So today's message is on gratitude in everything. So I'm going to start off with scripture. I'm going to decide which one. I have a couple that I was thinking of starting off with. And so let's see where we're going to go. Okay. I think I'm going to start. Let's just see here a minute. I think. Sorry for the dead air again. I should have had this one right waiting, and of course I didn't. Let's see if it's. Okay, so it's going to be 1 Thessalonians, and it is 5, and it is 16 to 18. And so rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. And so in every situation that we are going through, either good or bad, it is God who is either orchestrating it or allowing it to happen. So sometimes bad things happen, not God's plan, but He's allowing it to take place in your life so that it could produce a good work in you. So, sometimes He does orchestrate things, but when we see things that are like really bad, they're demonic, like really evil, this is not coming from God. This is not something that God ordained. And sometimes He won't allow it, sometimes He will block it, but other times He will allow whatever evil or whatever difficulties are coming at you to produce a good work in you, to produce character, to produce integrity, to produce certain things in you, also to develop a stronger relationship in Him, a stronger trust for Him, to get to know Him better. So God will allow a lot of bad things to happen in order to produce a good work in us. So that's why always be grateful in all situations. And so I'm going to start off. I'm going to actually just thinking about. Let me just go here because I write this stuff down. Just kind of like. And so, just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so yes, I'm going to start off with myself. So thinking about myself now in my 20s, and so probably early mid 20s, and I was working, and although like I was working, and then there were some guys that I was dating, but none would ever work out for me. Like just whoever I dated, it just was never right for me. And then I wasn't in the career that I wanted. And, I wanted to be married by the time I was in my 20s. I wanted to have kids in my 20s. And nothing seemed like it was going my way. And so I was really depressed over all of this. So, I'm working. I'm making a good living. And, but I was depressed because I just didn't have. I thought that my life should have turned out a certain way in my 20s, and it didn't. And so, like I said, I was really depressed over that. And so I was a follower of Jesus Christ at that time. Like this was before I had backslidden. And so the church, they had counseling. And so I spoke with this lady, this counselor, and she was young like me. She was actually the same age as me. And so I think I was something like 25 years old, and she was the exact same age as me. And so I started speaking to her. So I never met her. I never met her. I don't know exactly how the church set it up, but it was actually counseling. And so I would talk to her once a week. She would call me, and we would talk. And I would just go into her about how depressing my life was. I had nothing good to say to this lady. Every time this lady called me, I just talked about the blues of my life and how depressing, how I was so, like I was cursed because, like I didn't have what I wanted. Everyone else, they had their boyfriend and some of them were married and they had their career jobs. Everyone's life was better than mine. And I just went on and on about just how depressing my life was and how horrible it was. And every time I spoke with this lady, it was nothing but blues, so I would ask her about, how she's doing, because that's just my nature. Like I'm not one of those people who are caught up in myself. Like I always want to know how people are doing. But she was counseling me. So she would tell me her story about herself, she was, when she was going out with her boyfriend. And then, like she would tell me, her stories and everything. And, I was happy for her because that's not my nature again. Like I'm really in tune to me. Like I'm not worried about what's going on in other people's lives. It's just about me. So, I would always ask her, and, I was happy for her, that things were going well in her life, but I was just always rambling on and just about how depressing it is. And so one day she didn't call me back. And so I went to call her, and she didn't answer. And so, a couple of hours later, I called her back and no answer. And so I said, okay, I'll call her back, maybe she's just out or whatnot. And then the next day I called her and no answer. And then the following week I called her and there was no answer. And then the following week I called her and there was no answer. And I got the picture really quick. I got it really quick. One thing I'm not, like I can pick up on things. When I pick up on things, I'm boom. I pick up on things pretty quickly. So I got the picture right away that I was the problem. I did not think for 1 second that she was the problem. I understood that my story at that young age, I understood that I was depressing her, and I had nothing but complaints. There was no thankfulness. There was absolutely no thankfulness coming from out of me. It was just complaint. And so I learned a lesson. I said, okay, that's not going to happen again. I understand she doesn't want to speak to me. I didn't hold that against her because I understood that there's only so much people can take. No one wants to hear somebody constantly complaining. No one wants to hear that. We all are going through stuff. And we all have so much to be grateful, more to be grateful for than not. And so, at that time, even though I was a Christian, I was younger and I didn't have the understanding of God that I have now of him and how he moves and everything. So back then I didn't have it. I just thought it was his way of punishing me. I just thought maybe that, he didn't like me or something like that, and he liked everybody else. So I just looked at it that way. And so, like I said, but as I was saying, no one wants to hear people complaining all of the time. One thing I did learn in life, and especially as as I was getting older and everything, when situations like, okay, so when you're working and stuff, when you're in the workforce, and because I dealt with a lot of people, I dealt with a lot of clients, I dealt with vendors, I dealt with a lot of external people. And one thing I always said to myself, that no matter what kind of situation I am going through, no matter what it is that I am going through, I am going to make sure not to take it to my vendors. I'm going to make sure not to take it to my clients. I'm going to make sure not to take it to my customers. And I'm going to make sure to not allow them to see what I'm going through to the point where they have to say, "Are you okay? Is there something wrong with you?" Are you not feeling that well? I made it like this was something that I said to myself. I made a conscious decision to say that whatever I am going through, however I am feeling, if I have a migraine, if my toe is in agony, whatever the situation was, I made a point of saying, I'm not going to take this to the external people who I dealt with. And I mean, and not to say that if, there were some conversations and, we had conversations and whatnot, and then, they were saying, and then, you maybe said, well, I'm not feeling well, like I don't have, I have a headache. But to deliberately say, I'm not feeling good, I'm sorry, woe is me, I can't help you as much today, I can't give you my 100% today because I have a headache, I have a tummy ache, my toe, not to the point where I was going to use it as an excuse to do the job that I was hired and being paid to do. Because nobody wants to come in when they're receiving a service to then receive negative info. And another thing, when somebody is coming to receive a service, they want to receive the best service that there is. And there are some demanding people out there. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with being demanding. There are some people that are more easygoing. There are some clients that are more easygoing. There are some customers that are more easygoing. There are some customers that are more laid back and, will just let you do everything for them. And then there are some customers that are right in your face. Some of them are just right in your face and they want you to help them, but they want to be a part of the process of you helping them. And some of them are very demanding and they have every right to be demanding. And, some people could say, well, the person that is laid back is paying just as much as the person who is demanding, or the person who's more laid back is paying more. Sometimes the person who's really laid back and just says, hey, you know what, I'm going to let you take over this thing. And they pay a lot more. They are buying more than the one who's more demanding. But the one who's more demanding demands whatever service they are looking for, as long as it's not illegal and it's not without, and it's within the, the policy that the company provides. They demand. They should receive just what kind of service they're looking for, just as the person who is more laid back. So I promised myself that I would give my 100% regardless of what I was feeling, because nobody wants to, in the process of receiving a service, also receive complaints and a bad attitude. They're not paying for that. So that's one thing, and that's one way. That's one way of showing gratitude. Gratitude for the job that you are doing. And gratitude also for the clients that you are getting, the customers that come to you. It's a way of showing them gratitude, that you're happy for their service and that you are willing to go above and beyond whatever it is they are requesting of you. Not to just keep it at 100%, but to go beyond to the point where they say, oh my goodness, like you went out of your way for me today. Oh my goodness, like I wasn't expecting this kind of service. For them to actually say that the service that they received was beyond what they were expecting to receive. And this is how you are operating in a gratitude mode, giving people, who are coming to you for a service more than what they're asking for. They don't want to hear your sob stories. They don't want to hear your complaints. They want you to give them what it is they are seeking. And so this is a way of really kind of like showing gratitude for the job you have. It's showing gratitude, it's showing respect, not only to yourself, it's showing it to God, it's showing it to your customers. And so these are things that I learned from the mistakes that I made during the course of my life. Also, I learned, this was another thing that I learned not to talk about my customers. If they come to me with information, I don't talk about them to my customers. If there's an issue, if there's a complaint, for sure, I would take it to a manager and speak with the manager about that. But overall, to talk about like this one is so demanding, like you know what, they have a right to be demanding if that's who they are. And sometimes I find the demanding ones are the ones that I learn more from, because they're pushing me, they're forcing me to learn things or to go into things or to seek things that I didn't even know. So I come out with new information because of how demanding they are. Ingratitude. I'm using that as an example of this is what I learned from my mistakes, even my mistakes, in the workforce, and maybe, complaining about certain colleagues to other colleagues. And, God basically telling me, this is all a form of gossip. Like if you're complaining, because I would think of complaining, like if I'm not, talking about their lifestyle, if I'm not talking about their appearance, if I'm not talking about how they speak or how they talk, if I'm not attacking them physically, if I'm not attacking how they live physically, but if I just have a complaint about things that are bothering me, I didn't think of it as gossiping. I didn't think of it as anything wrong. But complaining is not a fruit of the spirit, and it is a form of gossiping. So God really let me know that was something that's just wrong. So gratitude in every situation. So regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of what you're going through, it is important that when you go, say, like into the workforce, and when you are dealing with people, that you do not take what you are going through into the workforce, because we are all going through stuff. And I also find that by not taking that into the workforce and by showing up and putting your work outfit on, that you actually forget about whatever situation or issue that you are dealing with, and you actually can look at it in a healthier way. By helping other people, you are actually helping yourself. It's like an endorphin, like a feel good endorphin. Like when you go out and you reach out to help somebody else, you are actually benefiting from that, and it actually helps you mentally to look at things healthier. And then it helps you mentally and emotionally to look at your situation and what you're going through better. So that's one example. So now my next example. Okay, I'm gonna talk about this. Another situation is where I noticed there was this man that I was dating, and this man was in his 40s. So this was years ago, but this man was in his 40s, and or close to his 40s. It was close. He wasn't in his 40s. He was close to his 40s, and it was so interesting, because we're talking, and then we were talking about like being in college and like our the programs that we graduated from, and he mentioned how his mother didn't help him to fill out his application to receive financial aid to go to college. Now, he said he was 18 years old at the time, and his mother did not help him to fill out his application to receive financial aid to go to college. So, of course, he had to do that. And the way he talked about that, like he talked about it as if it happened yesterday. Like, he was so upset with her and he was so angry with her. And it was like, but you didn't need your mom to fill that application out. You filled it out. And not only did you fill it out, you were accepted into the program. So why, after all these years, are you still harboring this kind of resentment towards your mother for something that you were capable and well able to do? And in fact, you did it. And you were accepted into the program and you graduated from the program. And so, like, people harboring like these, like having these real, like, resentment towards people for things that are nothing. It was nothing. And the kind of resentment that he had towards his mother was just, it was unbelievable. And I mean, the fact that his mother brought him up, the fact that his mother got him in a position, in a place where he could actually go to college and, and then graduate. I mean, if that was not enough to be grateful for, but people harbor these really, they harbor them, and like just ungratefulness for what your parents have done for you. Why would someone be upset over that? I found that fascinating. And another similar situation, like kind of similar, there was a friend of mine, and she was 23 years old, so very young. And very young. And because I think like one of her parents died at a very young age, so she was taken out of school. She was the oldest of the children, and so she had to care for the children. And she said, she wanted to be a lawyer. She came from another country. But so that was in her teens. So she was in Canada, probably at that time, maybe about 3-4 years before, we became friends. And, she talked about that, and she said how, like she harbored this kind of resentment toward her mother from taking her out of school and having her raise the children. And I mean, like I get the fact that she was upset that she was taken out of school and had to raise, her siblings. I understand that, I really do. But I said to her, and I even said to her, I said, well, you're still young. You can go back to school and you can pursue a law degree, if that's what you really want. And she said to me that no, at 23 years old, she said, no, it's too late for me to do it now, because I'm afraid that I will not be able to learn how to read and write and, do the things that are required of me if I go back to school. And I knew at that point that she was making an excuse, because the whole purpose in going to school is improving upon your reading, improving upon your writing, improving upon arithmetic and understanding and knowledge. That is the whole idea in going back to school. So the fact that she was saying that she didn't want to go back to school because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to receive the information that she was being taught, to me told me, yes, she was afraid. And we do have that. We all have fears. If not for college, like going to school or starting a job, we all have these types of fears. We do, and there's no. I think it's probably one of the worst things that you can do to yourself if you prevent yourself from doing the thing you want to do, simply because you're afraid to do it. Like it's a horrible, it's almost crippling to stop yourself from doing that is good for you, that is right for you, simply because you're afraid of what's going to happen. So I knew that there was an element to that there, but I also felt there was an element of like laziness. Like it's just not something I want to deal with. It's just not something I want to, I don't want to go there right now. She had a child. The child was 3 years old. 3 years old at the time, and that's not an excuse. It simply is not an excuse. And I'm going to actually go into another example why that is not an excuse. But I mean, like she and gratitude here, like she had the chance, like she had everything available to her, like financial aid. They would have helped with her child. I'm sure she could have got daycare. There was just so many options that she had available, and she just didn't take advantage of them. And like I said, those were the two reasons which I felt as to why she didn't pursue a higher education. But again, it's no longer the parent's fault when you become an adult and you don't do anything to correct a situation you see something wrong with. When you're a child, I understand, I get it. But when you become an adult and you actually see, okay, yeah, this is a problem. And if you don't do anything to fix that problem, the problem no longer is your parents. The problem now becomes your problem, and it becomes your fault if you do not do anything to correct it. Just again, we have that power and that we have that capability to make these kind of changes. So yes, I was going to go into another one as to why even having a child, I don't believe that is a reason. When I was in college, I had a job. I had actually, so I was in college, like, full time, college, full workload. I think it was even a little more over than a full load. There was, yeah. So, and after my classes, from Monday to Friday, I worked from 5 to 10 o'clock, Monday to Friday, every single day. And my friends in college, they would say, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do it every day. Because they work too, the people who I went to school with, they all had to work. But they didn't work 5 days a week. And I think they worked more on weekends, where I had my weekends off. But yeah, so I worked Monday to Friday, from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And it was just the way it was. My mom, she was a factory worker. We didn't have the money. And I paid for the utilities, and she paid the rent. And I had to buy my own stuff. I had to buy my own food. I had to buy my own clothes. I had to buy everything. And I mean, that's just the way it was. It wasn't me. I was never resentful towards her for what she couldn't give me, because the fact that she gave me a roof over my head, and the fact for me to be able to build a life was more than enough. And so I was very grateful, and I was very grateful to be able to help her in any way. So it was what it was, and I looked at it what it was, and if I could do anything to help financially, I did. So that was my part. So I did that, and it was hot. It was tiring, and but I was so grateful that I had a job Monday to Friday. I got paid. This was in the 80s, late 80s. This was in the late. I got paid $500 a week in the late 80s to work Monday to Friday. And like they would say, friends at school, they say, there is no one in college who makes the kind of money you make. Because $500 a week, that's what I made. And it was at Nutrisystem. So it was that weight loss clinic that I'm sure most of you have heard about and you know about. So that's where I worked. Made $500 a week. They would give us food. They would give us their food, like the Nutrisystem food. Let me tell you that food. I don't know if any of you know about their food. I don't know if any of you tried their food. And they have some good food. I used to love their gummies. I loved their chips. Trying to think about some of the other stuff. But that food, we talked about it. It was like a running joke at the office. Um, that food, I mean, there were times, I'm telling you, there were times that, depending on how much I put in me, and especially the gummies, I love the gummies, but depending on how much I put in me, I could fly home by the gas. It was unreal what that food, like gas wise, we joked about it so much. Anyway, I digress. So I was doing that. That was very hard for me to do. And so I thought, I kind of thought, look at me, look at me, like and I was, and I think that was, in a way for me to pat myself on the back, because I was doing a really difficult thing of going to school full time, full workload, and then working Monday to Friday, and then only having really the weekend. Sometimes in the evenings I would, I studied, like when I got home, I would study as well. But really just kind of cramming everything in there. So I was proud of myself. Then in the third semester, I met this lady. I was taking one of those, one of those courses, those selective, just one of those courses that you could take, optional courses. And I met this lady in that course. And this lady, it kind of made me feel like, okay, you know what? I may be not as bad as I think I am. And so this lady also had, she was also attending college full-time, full workload. She, like me, was working in the evenings, and she had 2 children. She had no spouse, she had no partner, and she was doing that. And I was just like blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, like this lady here is, like, this is impressive. And I was just blown away. I was so impressed. I never saw anything like that before. This is the first time that I, met someone who did something like that. So meeting that lady just kind of, that paved my way of how I looked at people and how and when they do things and when they don't do things, and when and so then I knew when I was hearing excuses, and I knew when I was hearing reasons. I knew the difference because that lady had 2 children. They were young children, and she had no one to help her, and she was going to school full time, and she was working, I was told, full time, like she told me. And then she had these kids, but she did it, like she put herself through school. And so that's just, that may not be ingratitude, but that's just kind of like showing, and in a way it is gratitude. It's, like taking what you have and making the most of it. But that's my reason for not believing a person having a child cannot go to school and do, because I saw it. I saw the example about that. But anyway, when we get back to gratitude here and what I was talking about with gratitude. Another thing with gratitude, and in all times, like just being grateful for what you have. When I was in my teens, I met this lady who lived in my neighborhood, and she had cancer. So she was in her 50s, probably in her late 40s, early 50s. We became really good friends. I was in my teens, and she was in, like I said, she was the age that she was a bit much older than me, like old enough to be a parent. And she, like I said, we became good friends. And I learned so much from her about being grateful. She was a herbalist. She was into all natural stuff, and that was because of because of her cancer. She was trying to heal herself through eating healthy and putting healthy things into her body. She was a follower of Jesus Christ, and she believed that she was going to be healed one day. And she went through a lot of pain. Sometimes she would tell me about it, but she didn't talk about it often. Like, she talked about a lot of really good things. She was so positive, regardless of what she was going through. And I knew she was going through pain. And I mean, like I said, she was a good friend to me. And and she helped me through difficult situations because I was really a mess in my teens. I was really insecure, and I really didn't believe a lot in myself. And so she really helped me to believe in me. So she poured into me so much, even though she was going through what she was going through. She had 2 children, so it's not like she was alone. But she was such an example of being a positive person in a very negative situation. And, she knew her Bible. She knew her Bible, and she believed full-heartedly that she was going to be healed of her cancer. And then and for years she was doing well, like she was holding on. From her, I learned about vegan food. That's who I learned about vegan food from. So I knew about like vegetarian food in my teens simply because she introduced me to it. For a time, I think that's all I was eating. But I learned about it from her, and like even when she was getting worse, and I mean, and it was so heartbreaking to see, like even though, even when she was getting worse, she still held on to that belief that she was going to be healed and that God was going to heal her. She didn't complain about her pain, and she tried to pour into me. Um, so much, like she poured into me so much, like she helped to make me the person I am today. I mean, my mom is the one who really poured into me, and then of course Jesus is the one who really poured into me. But she does have a part, and she does play a role in parts of me that have shaped me. Just to see through that pain, not complaining, not being mad at God, just trusting Him, just believing in Him, going to church. It was something that I just held on to. And so, just being grateful going through the situation that she was going through, being happy that she had the kids that she had, being grateful that she had me in her life. She even told me, I was so, I thank God for having you in my life. And she had her sister and her niece, and they would come and they would help her, and like all the help that she was getting, she was so grateful for all the people and all the hands that she had in her life, regardless of the pain that she was going through. There was someone else, and I think about her as well. This is when I was working at the beauty boutique, and it's kind of like a similar situation where but she had a Christian background. Then she was half Jewish. She then married a Jewish man, went into Judaism, but she grew up Christian. So when she learned that she had cancer, she wanted to come back to her Christian roots. And it's interesting, that's when we became really, really close. And just her attitude, just her faith, never getting mad at God, drawing closer and closer to God, even though she was becoming more ill, even though she was becoming more thin, even though she was going through more pain, just expressing that gratitude, just talking about God in such a beautiful way, regardless of the situation, regardless of the pain, and even though she was getting worse, and she was just getting worse, and she was getting worse, and she never gave up on Jesus. She never gave up on God. Like when she was diagnosed with cancer, like I said, she came back to her Christian roots, and she just became stronger and stronger. And she was just, saying that, when I get healed, I'm going to be, I'm going to go out there and I'm just going to minister to people and bring people to God. And I know had she lived, she would have did that. And so it's just being grateful in every situation, because in every situation, God has a reason. And God brought her back to Him through that situation. It was sad to see her go. It was sad, but she's in heaven. She's in heaven. And I don't want to go. There was a beautiful dream somebody was telling me about her. It was absolutely beautiful, and the dream was basically like she just came from heaven. Yeah, but she accepting God and just making God her everything through her last months in the world, being very positive in a very negative and painful situation, being happy, being so happy that um, her illness was what brought her back to God, was her expressing her gratitude to God for basically saving her from dying and going to hell. And so, yeah, so being grateful in all situations, because all situations are orchestrated by God. Now I'm going to talk about myself. Actually, there was, I think I kind of like covered everything. So basically, the last, the last video that I had spoke on, which was It's a Matter of Perspective, I feel it very important. There was one piece of information, one very important piece of information that I left out because I felt really kind of rushed to complete the video. So this one, it was actually when I was talking about how I actually was at the falls. So when I was at the falls, like I was in Niagara Falls, but I wasn't actually at the falls. So I was in Niagara Falls. I was very close to the falls. So I was in Niagara Falls at a community center. And this is a very important piece of information because I need to give God the glory that he deserves in this. And I didn't quite give him that. So when I had mentioned that God said that I had to get out, like I had to get out of the country now. He had given me warnings and dreams about how dangerous living in Canada was for me, and how actually being in America would be far better for me. He'd given me dreams. I've seen visions. There were so many things that were coming at me. Then I had prophets saying the same thing, but it was me. I was going, there was information that he was feeding me, showing me through, and then talking, internally talking to me. So I was getting a lot of warnings in very, very, every way. Like I said, dreams, everything. And it was like when he showed me, Canada, and then when he showed me the US, it was like black and white. It was like day and night. What he was showing me the real danger. It was scary, even in those dreams. It was terrifying in those dreams. And then how I was able to make it over to America, and then, I was fine. And so, but yes, so I have to give him props for, so he gave me all of that as well. So when he told me that day, you gotta leave now. You gotta get out of this country now. And when God says something and you act on it, and God will help you. He will do the rest. If you do your part, he's gonna do the rest. So I had to write everything down on everything that I was receiving on MapQuest. I had to write it all down, because I didn't have a phone. And so I wrote it down. And what I wrote down was it was going to take me 7 hours. And of course, I didn't know where I was in Niagara Falls. All I knew was very close to falls. And so I said, this somehow is not adding up. It just doesn't sound like it's making sense because I'm too close to the falls for it to take 7 hours for me to have to walk there. And so then I went outside, and immediately outside there was a man in an SUV. I remember the SUV, it was a white SUV, and I think it was white. Anyway, it was an SUV. So he was in an SUV. I went to him, I asked him about the falls, I'm assuming that he knew the area, and he did. And so when he looked at my directions and everything, he said, it's not going to take you an hour. 7 hours. It's only going to take you an hour. If you go this way, it's going to take you 1 hour. And because I wrote that all down. Like I let him know I don't have a phone, like I don't have a GPS, I have nothing. And so he said, and I told him, I don't care if it takes me 7 hours, I gotta get out. I have to go. And I will walk, and it was freezing. And I said, I don't care how cold it is, I'm gonna make sure and do that truck. And so he goes, wait a minute, okay, wait a minute. So he goes on his iPhone, he starts doing stuff. And so I'm standing there. And then, after he finishes on his iPhone, he looks at me and he said, I called Uber for you. And Uber's gonna take you to the falls. So Uber was there in 5 minutes. 15 minutes, I was at the border. Probably 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, something like that, I was in the US. So from the point of God telling me, I gotta leave now, to getting on American soil probably took me less than an hour. God was serious. He meant what he said. And if I just did my part by executing it, he was going to ensure that he got me out of the country. And so I just had to give him props there. So now, about myself and about being grateful and being grateful in difficult situations. When and I'm going to kind of go back to this because when I was staying at the hotel, and it was a hotel, actually it was not a motel, it was a hotel, and it was sweet. I had my furniture in storage. So I had my furniture in storage for quite a few years. Long story. So I had my furniture in storage, and had in storage, but I was staying at the hotel because God was saying to me He wanted me to stay in that hotel. He said, and I felt it. It felt so good staying there. Like it felt right. It felt like this. Okay, this is where I need to be for now. And I loved staying in the hotel. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So after I was into almost my first year at staying at the hotel, I had a number of bills that I had to pay. I had to pay for my car. I had to pay, pay for rent, there were just a number of things that I had to pay for. And so I couldn't pay for everything, and I mean, I was living off of savings, but at the same time, I just couldn't do all of that. So I had this stuff in storage. This was my furniture. So this was the majority of my clothing. This was like my life was in storage. And I couldn't pay for storage. I couldn't pay for it. So what ended up happening was I lost everything. And it was so interesting because probably like a couple of years prior to that, just before like everything, this was, because this was during COVID too. So this was like in 2021 when this happened. And so prior to that, just before COVID, I remember like having a conversation with God, and I said to God, God, I think like if I were in a situation where if I lost everything, I don't know, like I'm afraid that I would, turn away. Like I'm just afraid that I would do that. And I think God likes a good challenge. And so, make sure you don't say things like that to God, because He just may put you in that kind of situation. So when that happened, like I thought that would happen, and it didn't. Like I became even closer to Him. I became stronger in Him. I loved Him more. And, everything was gone because everything was in storage. Like all my clothes, all my furniture. And don't get me wrong. I'm going to be very honest with you. God showed me my character. And I think that was what God was doing. God knew how I would react. God knew how I would respond. God knew. I didn't know. When I lost everything, I'm not going to lie to you, I could have cared less. The only thing that was gut-wrenching to me, there were just a couple of things that were gut-wrenching to me. My mother was alive at the time, but there were some things that she had given me that they were sentimental to me. So those things I wanted to keep. And the photos, all the photos of family, the photos of my mom, the photos of myself, um, photos of people, photos of friends, photos. Losing all of that was gut wrenching. Had a lot of clothes, had a lot of shoes, had a lot of furniture, had a lot of stuff. And I didn't care because you can buy new clothes. You can buy new furniture. Some of that furniture I was going to get rid of anyway, so it didn't really matter. But clothes you can buy, shoes you can buy, stuff you can buy, you can repurchase it. The pictures you can't recreate, but none meant as much to me as God. And I proved to myself just how much God meant to me, or I should say, God proved to me how much how much He meant to me through that process. Like all of it, gone, and I couldn't, it didn't bother me. Like I said, the only thing were the photos and the stuff that she had given me, but everything else can be repurchased. And the only thing I wanted, and I was worried because I did not want to give up on God. The only thing I was worried about was giving up on Him, and the fact it brought me closer to Him, and the fact I just became closer to Him. Our relationship grew; it got even deeper. And so then through this whole process of going through, losing all of that stuff, so many losses. There's so many losses that there's so many things that I had gone through. I'm not even going to go, I'm not even going to talk about it. Simply because, I don't know, I mean, some of it, it's going to be between me and God. Like, well, I'll be taking some of this stuff to the grave, not because I'm ashamed of it, but it's just so much. And I just don't feel that it's necessary to go through all the stuff that I have been through. I don't feel that that is necessary. I think, for me to capture certain events, it's important for testimony, but I don't feel like everything, and trust me, the things that are like loss after loss, the things that were coming at me, if I can't. I can't. And this is about being grateful and trusting God and knowing that, okay, excuse me, yes, I experienced loss in so many areas, but I trust God. I trust His sovereignty. This is when I was beginning, and then, because I've had a relationship, as I was coming back to Him in the early O's, then in 2012, I sealed the deal, and I came back to Him, and I was going through a process of Him cleansing me up, refining me, just taking me through so much, getting rid of so many impurities in me. So by 2021, He kind of had solidified me to the point where it was about Him, and where it was about Him. So moving forward from that, and don't get me wrong, I was still getting upset about Him with certain things because there were a lot of, like I said, I'm not going to go into all of that. There's no reason for it. But I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand still why I was going through what I was going through and why God wasn't doing anything to alleviate what I was going through. But I trusted Him. I trusted His sovereignty. I trusted Him being God. And I knew that He wasn't going to hurt me. And I knew He was taking me somewhere. So that's why when the whole, so when the 3-year mark hit, and then I was on the streets, it was like, oh gosh, here's another loss. What is going on? But I still trusted Him. Because regardless of how bad something looks, God is working it out for the best. And if I did not do it God's way, I wouldn't be here today. It had to be done God's way. And that's why when I did it God's way, then when I stayed with the family in Niagara Falls, which was God's way, and that's kind of like a funny story too, because he had a meeting with me there when I was staying with that family. We met, like he actually, we met there. It was a very powerful moment where he downloaded a lot of stuff to me. But at the same time, he said to me, you already knew that that was dangerous territory and yet you still went. But at the same time, he wanted me there. He knew I was going to go there. So he gave me the grace to go there, even though it was a dangerous situation that I had walked into. But he said you should have listened to your intuition. But at the same time, that was where I was supposed to be, because that's what brought me close to the falls. And ultimately, he wanted me. He wanted me in the U.S. This is where he wants me. And so in order to get me to the U.S., like I had to go through what I went through. And if I had given up on him, I'd be toast. And so my whole point in saying this is that sometimes miracles and blessings can look like they're coming from a trash can. It can look so disgusting and so miserable, and it could be the most beautiful blessing. It's like, like finding a diamond in a bunch of garbage, and something you wouldn't expect to find, like say a diamond ring or a brick of gold, piled up with a whole bunch of garbage and junk and gunk and all that. But sometimes the greatest blessings are in a mess. The greatest blessings. And so things don't always look of the way we expect them to look. So if we put our trust in God and allow him to work out our lives, even when we're going through some ugly stuff, if we just stick with him through the ugly mess, he will get us through it to the rainbow. I do have another scripture. This one is going to be in Philippians. And so, excuse me. Like last time, my time is crunch time. Okay, let me just go through this. Let's give you Philippians. And 3. If I can find it here. Yeah, well, this one, Paula says, what is more, I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them garbage, that I may gain Christ. So at the end of the day, we lose, like I lost everything. I lost my mom, I lost everything. But it's been like heaven and hell for me, because my relationship with God has been fabulous. Spiritually, I've been just increasing and increasing and increasing. My connection with God has just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper. My love for him has just grown. My understanding of God has improved so much. I trust him so much more now than I ever trust him. And I know that he loves me so much. And I know that all he wants for me is his best. I have grown and I have matured so much in my relationship with God. I'm not perfect by any means. I make mistakes. I make blunders. I do. But I have a deep, rich relationship with God. So that's one. And let me see, there's another one, Philippians 2, 14. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. So that's why, yes, I was saying, about being grateful in every situation, not grumbling, not complaining. Complaining, like I said, it's not a fruit of the Spirit. It's not of God. Um, Complaining and grumbling. This is not gratefulness. This is not showing God that you're grateful for what He is doing, because everything, regardless if it is a negative situation or a positive situation, um, it is good because it is God who is orchestrating it, and He is allowing it to happen for your good. And not only that, He's allowing it to happen to bring you closer to Him. Like for me, it was all about me becoming closer to Him, me learning about Him, me trusting about Him. Things like character He was developing in me, integrity He was developing in me. He was developing certain things in me, because it is easy for us to be really like loving God and be, all cheer God when things are going good. But when you strip all that from the person, what that person presents to you is who they are. And so God was shaping me with nothing, and, like building me up and building me up in Him. Um, you know, just trusting and relying on Him, and just focusing on Him, and not focusing on the externals, not focusing on the material things or things that matter to the world, but things that are eternal and everlasting in Christ. And so this is why, just be grateful in every situation, because in every situation God is working it out for our good. He's not working it out to hurt us. And like I said, with my situation, it has been heaven and it has been hell. It's been both. So I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change one thing because of the experiences that I have learned, and how it's drawn me closer to my God, and just the connection that I have with Him, and just knowing He's for me, knowing that He's got my back, and that He's fighting for me, and that He's protecting me, and how much He loves me. And I wouldn't have known to this degree about Him had I not gone through what I have gone through in the past few years. And so just be grateful in every situation. God is working it out for your good. It may not seem like it. It may not feel like it. Like this stuff, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel, doesn't feel nice. But normally when things don't feel good, like when you work out, when you go to the gym, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel nice. But the end result is good, and the end result is nice. It's just like when you're dieting or something like that. It doesn't feel good when you're depriving yourself of certain things or certain foods. When you're depriving yourself of certain things that aren't good for you, it does not feel good, but the end result is always good. And so just be grateful in everything that God's doing for you, and just speak to Him, ask Him, why is this situation happening? What is going on? He may not tell you everything. He may share some things with you. We don't need to know everything. We just need to really trust Him. But He will give you answers enough, for you to move forward in. And so that's the message that I have today from the Word of the Lord. If you are not a follower of Jesus Christ, I would strongly recommend that you become one, because there is absolutely no life like living for Jesus Christ. Give Him a year of your life, and I promise you, you will never want to turn back. Just accept Him into your life, turn away from your current style of living, and just die to your selfish needs, die to your agenda and what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you want out of life, and just do it His way. And because He knows everything, He knows what's right for you. He knows the pitfalls that are ahead, that you may want to, in the direction that you may want to go, and He will steer you the other way. But you can't see that because you don't know the future, but he knows everything. So let him be your GPS, let the Holy Spirit be your GPS and guide you in the right direction and give you a life that you probably never thought you would have ever had. A better life, a life, one that you could not imagine. So that is it for this message. And until next time, God bless and have a wonderful week. Bye bye.